Hi everyone, my name is Karen Hayhurst and I delve into the research of energy and consciousness. Last time you might have joined me for that first video blog on the interconnectedness of everything. So I thought I'd add on to that and start the discussion on how space, our celestial family, affects us. And specifically in this edition, we're going to talk about the sun and its contributions, which are the solar flares. And also the timing of our birth, which sounds a lot like astrology, but it recently has been shown, or research has been into how that, your birth date, affects your health and well-being. Sounds a little crazy, but for me, I totally believe that it's all interconnected and that you can't look just at the person as an island, but you actually have to take that they're part of this and have a whole symbiotic relationship with the whole universe. So we're part of this everything, as I stated in the last edition we had. So let's talk first about the sun. Big sphere in the sky, the center of our solar system. For us, we circle around it with the other planets. And only recently has really the discussion escalated into what happens with solar storms. They have different intensities. The sun, with its sunspots. And it started to be looked at, how does that affect the Earth? Well, we're on the Earth, so I thought most people would be more interested exactly how it affects them in their health and well-being. So I did some investigating. And that investigating came up with some fascinating articles, and a few of them published in some different medical journals. One was actually published in the British Medical Journal, the open version of it. And then I have some from the National Center of Biotechnology Information and CBI at the U.S. National Library of Medicine, short form NLM. So let's just go through a few of these and I'll tell you a bit about them. One here, it's called Solar Cycles and the Relationship to Human Disease and Adaptability by Davis Jr. And this one here is from the research group, Mr. Davis Jr. It's from the research group of Psychobernetics in Augusta, Maine. So what his study was, how the solar cycles actually affect the relationship on human disease and adaptability. And what's so very interesting, particularly about this research project, is that they actually put the people into groups pertaining to the birth date. So right away, they're looking to see, is at the time of birth, the seasons have any effect on the person's genetic makeup, okay, which could definitely at some point lead to disease, as most of us believe in the genes rule everything. However, we'll discuss that in a moment. But anyways, they're showing over onto this research project that they did 11-year cycle peaks predispose human to disease, but also endow creativity and adaptability, meaning, that sun and its cycles can affect us, can create disease, and it can also affect and allow us to evolve and have adaptability. And then in a study, they took 237,000 subjects, unique clients around the Maine area and out from there, and collected from 1995 to 2004. So they have a big, extensive study, and inclusive and related to the solar cycle irradiance for the past 71 years, encompassing 7 solar cycles. So the results showed that the radiation peaks in solar cycles, particularly in chaotic solar cycles, so high solar storms, lots of solar storms, are associated with higher incidence of mental disorders, suggesting sensitivity, even in the embryonic tissues, to ultraviolet radiation. So it looked at different diseases, categorized them. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. I read you a little bit there. It concluded that the intermittent and largely unpredictable peak solar cycle radiation has been fundamental engine of evolution, forcing organisms to adapt to mutagenic UVR and producing enough damage to instigate genetic variation. Probably a chance of genetic mutation over 80,000 years ago produced a human brain capable of abstract thought and consciousness. Isn't that amazing? So without this solar activity, our frontal lobe and that would not have progressed the way it did. We have to look, this could be very much the missing piece. We keep looking at here of our species on land, and that actually shows us that something happened over time, that we evolved. And Mr. Darwin he'd probably be very happy to add in about the celestial activity. And I also have to say, very interesting about Darwin, and I need to look this up again, the exact resource, that apparently he said our emotions have a great deal to do with our evolution. You can think that if that sun's helping us to increase that mental, our brains, and that the mental activity and that can increase, that, one of the ways we would be hindering it is actually from our emotion. But that's a topic for another session. So the slight genetic instability that favored adaptable, creative brain also produced various diseases, or our correlation to have these diseases manifest. So that's just one. Another one are solar flares, an overlooked factor in autoimmune disease. Laura C. Pullen, PhD. And the results of the data analysis from this study was actually published in BMJ, or the British Medical Journal, in the open version of that. And what it just says, this is a new study. These are actually very recent. This was June 22nd, 2015. The last one I read to you was actually 2006, May 15th in 2006. So anyways, back to Laura Pollen's study here. A new study suggests that geomagnetic activity from the sun may contribute to autoimmune disease. Simon Wing, senior staff physicist at Johns Hopkins University, and colleagues investigated whether measures of solar cycles correlated with the incidence of giant cell arthritis, GCA, or rheumatoid arthritis, RA, in single county in southern Minnesota. The investigators found that the disease incidence rates did vary with the solar cycle. And then, as I said, that's in the BMJ journal. And here's just a lovely piece here. Printed a lot of these ones off. Another one for you. This one is from 2008. And it's peaks of solar cycles affect gender ratio. So what it said is a gender ratio is a sensitive indicator of environmental effects, and therefore is pertinent to epigenetics. Has anybody heard of epigenetics? Well, basically the environment, it turns on genes or doesn't turn on genes. And if you think about the environment encompassing everything, not just the air around you, but also your celestial family, of course any pollution, then your celestial family, then it is possible then that the sun and its activity does have an effect on you, which starts to make sense. The science becomes very real that the planets, especially the sun and the moon, are definitely have an effect on you. So this paper supports a hypothesis that solar radiation, probably in the ultraviolet spectrum, by some manner interacts with chromosome DNA or genes, and produces genetic variety that not only fosters adaptation, but also produces disease that reduce lifespan. And this actually, they believe this is happening, is more effective modifying genomes at the time of conception rather than later in a life. So in other words, it's already setting up the story. The epigenetics, and they believe it's setting up the immune system to of the mother, and then of course relates to the fetus itself. So interesting study. And then another one I printed off. I mean, there was tons of them, which is fascinating that we're looking at the world another expanded way. So another one I have for you here is, again in 2008, The Light of Life, Evidence that the Sun Modulates Lifespan. And this paper reinforces findings of others regarding the seasonality of various diseases, that there are factors occurring early in utero that increase susceptibility to disease later in life. And once again, pertaining to the 11-year solar cycles, and talking about how life can be shortened or expanded. The authors also show that changes in seasonal light modulate lifespan differently in males and females, and that genome and environment must be tightly interactive very early in conception. And one of the other ones actually too had listed that where you live on the planet, if you're in your latitude, and how that affects you. But that would make sense too, because if you think that the Earth and the way it's tilted, and for the sun, that definitely would have an effect, because it's the way you take in the light. So all this once again opens us up to the idea that we're no man's an island. We're, as I said, all connected, and what happens on that sun, those sunspots, is affecting us. And in another session, I am going to talk about another way that the sun affects our wellness, if you consider wellness a very different aspects of your life, including financial, exercise, and that. We're going to discuss those and how the sun affects that. So if you're interested in finding out more about these studies, or would like me to elaborate or share where I got some of those studies, please don't hesitate to email me at reikikaren@rogers.com. And I've typed that out for you. And also my website, the Nexuspoint, I've put that listed down here for you as well. So I hope you found that exhilaratingly exciting, that the possibility of what the ancients knew about the planets, astrology, but in the form of true astrology, which is the science of the position of the planets, and definitely the sun, has an effect on you. And that those times you're born, like if you're an Aries, like I'm an Aries, like me, then there are certain ways I'll be more susceptible maybe to different diseases and chronic problems later. But also remember that isn't necessarily, a sentence that you're predestined to have that, because what it opens you up to is the idea is you're part of something bigger. And yet you're small in it, but you do have a mind, and you can think. And since you can think, you start to realize who's the master and who's the servant. And when you realize that you're part of this big thing, these things are happening, that's not so much a mystery. It's very empowering, but you also have the ability to think in better ways that could actually change that, and yet still have that power of the sun that's saying you're evolving, because I'm giving you the power to do that. I'm giving you that energy. I'm charging this atmosphere of your earth so that you can progress. Anyways, that's all for now, because I've taken a little longer. And like I said, contact me, and I'll see you next time. Have a great week.